Florida Panthers, Tampa Bay Lightning, two of the most dominant teams over the past 5 years. Which dynasty was more impressive? We'll talk about it today on a special crossover edition of Locked on Lightning and Locked on Panthers.
You're Locked on Lightning, your daily podcast on the Tampa Bay Lightning, part of the Locked on Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked on Lightning and Locked on Panthers your first listens of the day every single day. We are your free daily Locked on podcast covering the Tampa Bay Lightning and Florida Panthers, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, for both shows, we want to shout out all the fans, the everydayers who tune into every single show. We both love you guys, and we appreciate the support you give us week in and week out. I'm Nick Morgan, one of the hosts of Locked on Lightning, and I am joined by my frenemy from the Sunshine State, Armando Velez, host of Locked on Panthers. Mighty Mondo, man. Welcome in.
Yeah, grateful to be connecting with you as where you are beginning your rivalry series for the Atlantic Division, and I'm continuing week by week on discussing dynasty talk, comparing what the Panthers are pursuing versus the teams that have been in pursuit and also have completed it as well.
Yeah, I love that, and we have a lot to talk about, my friend, because you guys are in the midst of one of the most fun runs for any NHL franchise that I can remember right now. Everybody talks about the back-to-back Stanley Cups. Not everybody remembers, hey, you also went to the Stanley Cup the year before that. So that's 3 straight Cup appearances for you guys. I got to ask, man, just as a personal level, as a fan tuning in and watching these games, got to be one of the most fun sports experience of your life.
Yeah, it's been the only time where I've seen a championship won in person. I was not in the building for Game 7 in 2024, but thankfully I was in the building for when the Panthers did win the Stanley Cup the second time in 2025 on June 17th. So it's been great just to be a part of it, just the community growth all around it. And we were even speaking pre-recording of how I'm not too far from the Tampa Bay area, so I kind of saw what the fans of north of South Florida got to experience with their Stanley Cup runs, and then as a South Florida native and also a fan of this team. And then I always talk about how the Panthers defeating the Lightning defeating the Panthers in those 2 playoff series at the beginning of this. Really made the Panthers a lot better and got them to this point, especially that sweep in 2022. And you think about this, 6 straight years that the state of Florida has represented the Eastern Conference in the Stanley Cup final. The only difference is Tampa Bay, win, loss. The Panthers, loss, win.
You have to rub that in, don't you? It seems like you guys got better. We stumbled out of the gate. But it is interesting because naturally, I think everybody in the state of Florida wants to compare these 2 dynasties. And it's really sort of night and day because it is crazy. You know, Tampa Bay, we won our 2 during some of those weird COVID years, 2000, the bubble hockey tournament, as it was dubbed, the shortened season next year, and getting, the first full year back to quote unquote normal hockey was when we lost to Colorado. It's interesting because you guys have kind of not had, and I say this, a term that I absolutely hate, and I'm sure we'll dive into it, the asterisk next to your cup runs either. You guys have done this in 3 82-game seasons. It is. I'm curious about your take on sort of comparing these 2 dynasties, because each, I think, are impressive in their own right, maybe just in a little bit different ways.
I mean, 2 cups in 10 months for the Tampa Bay Lightning is not an easy feat neither. Don't get me wrong when it comes to that.
Thank you. Yeah.
And so and shortened off seasons as well. That's difficult as can be when it comes to trying to do it again, and also getting back to not only a normal season, but even the season, even the first season back in a normal 82, there was still a lot of postponements of games and guys going down, expanded taxi squads as well. Remember, the Panthers were also coming off a year where their AHL affiliates, the Charlotte Checkers, before they became, it was the Charlotte Checkers when it was a new affiliate for them. They were combining with the Syracuse Crunch just a few years ago before that. So there's a lot of things going up and down that was so difficult for both of these teams to manage as far as ice time. And here's the thing, Nick, that I kind of realized that for the Tampa Bay is that they had so many chances if it weren't for COVID to at least keep the band together a little more. But with the flat cap, it really kind of hurt them as far as keeping the guys like the Yanni Gourde the first time around, Andrei Palat, Blake Coleman, Barclay Goodrow, having to trade Ryan McDonough the first time and then bring him back. And I know there's rumors about possibly him being traded again. And the most notable one, their inability to keep their captain, Steven Stamkos, at the time. So that is where the difference is between the Florida Panthers and the Tampa Bay Lightning is the Florida Panthers, although they did some great work during the flat cap, signing Alexander Barkov to his deal, and then nobody really exceeding that. And then the work that was done around that has helped the Florida Panthers keep the band together while it was difficult even for Tampa Bay to keep their guys. And it's not just 2020 and 2021 for the Lightning. In 2004, they win the Stanley Cup at home against Calgary in 7 games. What happens after? The lockout. So there's all those 3 championships. Tampa Bay could have had more momentum after the fact of winning, but certain circumstances that were outside of the control hurt them in a way.
Yeah, I always like to joke. I think the Tampa Bay Lightning have benefited from some of the best luck and worst luck in the league, just in terms of, lottery success sort of after those lean years, getting Stamkos, getting Victor Hedman, Steve Yzerman, and later Julian Breezeball striking gold with some draft picks and finding Nikita Kucherov after every other NHL team had passed on him. But you're right. It just seems like the Lightning have kind of had to deal with timing. And to your point, I'll go up back to, 2020, 2021, because that's the year that everybody says asterisk next to the Lightning's Cup win. It's not like they were the only team that got to play a shortened schedule.
Yeah.
Every other NHL team had to figure out the same situation the Lightning were going through. And yeah, it's not like they played 56 games while the Florida Panthers played 80 or anything like that. They had to navigate that. And to me, I do think there is some level of that run being super impressive, because not only are you kind of having to navigate some of the weird challenges involving taxi squads and shortened schedules, and all of a sudden, you're playing the Nashville Predators in your division when they're normally in the West Coast, all kinds of just kind of weird topsy-turvy things. You manage that. You manage having to build a team in sort of these off-kiltered off seasons, as you mentioned, with a flat cap, with a lot of other sort of roster restrictions. You manage that and win 2 Stanley Cups in a row. That has to say something for Tampa Bay. And I will say this, when you compare these 2 rivalries, the one thing I do give the Panthers a lot of credit for is just the sheer amount of games that they've played over the past 3 years.
Over 310.
Yeah, 310, which I think is the NHL record for most in a 3-year span. And they've gotten sharper every year. And that's something that, going back and watching Tampa, I remember sort of that last year, the Cup loss to Colorado. There are points where it's like they look like they're running out of gas. They look like they're hitting a wall. I watched a lot of Panthers last year. I just didn't see those signs. I think that's what's crazy to me.
Yeah, and to think that even in the series that they lost against Vegas Golden Knights in 2023, what happens? A significant injury to Matthew Tkachuk with the sternum injury, that even though the Panthers, even at full strength, I don't think that they were good enough to beat the Vegas Golden Knights. And then this time, Matthew Tkachuk was hobbled, but still able to complete the job, still undecided on the surgery. And then in 2022 for the Tampa Bay Lightning, you wonder, what if Braden Point were to play that series against the Colorado Avalanche? What could have happened there? and we talk about luck for other teams. But also, if it weren't for the Florida Panthers trying to trade for Victor Kozlov in the late 90s, and the Tampa Bay Lightning wouldn't have ended up with Vinny Lecavalier. So thanks to the Florida Panthers, they kind of gave the Tampa Bay Lightning a Stanley Cup there in 2004, getting Vinny Lecavalier there. So a little bit of that connection as well from the late 90s to the early 2000s there.
Yeah, and as somebody who used to cover Locked On Predators, there is also a Nashville Predators connection in that trade. You could have seen club legend David Legwand with the Florida Panthers for a while as well. Speaking of building, I do want to talk about how these two teams were put together because I think there's maybe some interesting similarities, but also I think a couple of key differences to talk about. And we'll talk about that coming up in just 1 second. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. And folks, August 26th is officially FanDuel Futures Day. It's a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches. For just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before week 1 even kicks off, this is your moment. So take a flyer on the MVP race. I'm going to go off the grid and say Jordan Love might be the guy this year for MVP. Crown your champion in August. Sorry, I'm not picking the Bucks. I'm picking the Buffalo Bills. Or parlay your division winner, dark horses. So visit the FanDuel app and start planning your future bets now because Futures Day is 1 day and 1 day only. FanDuel, play your game. Welcome back to this special crossover edition of Locked On Lightning and Locked On Panthers. Nick Morgan from Locked On Lightning, along with Armando Velez from Locked On Panthers. Armando, we're kind of talking about the two dynasties of our two teams. We have dominated the Eastern Conference over the last 6 years. Shout out to Hockey in the Sunshine State. I want to talk about how these two teams were put together. And I'm going to give you a sentence, and I want to see if you agree with me on this. It seems like for the Tampa Bay Lightning, they had the core a long time, and what they were missing were some of those key supporting pieces. Mm-hmm. From the outside in, and I know there might be some nuance here, it looks to me like the Panthers had some good players, but had to do some major surgery on the core to really get over the hump.
More than just that. I do agree with the statement, but more than just that, it was also about the ability to get other guys who were seen as guys that were given up from on other teams, and then the Panthers being able to pounce on them. And here's the thing, more importantly, is their ability to not pay a high price as far as draft assets for them neither. I mean, yeah, they traded for a first round pick for Sam Reinhart and Matthew Tkachuk, but then you think about how they were able to just to get other pieces for even their 2024 run in a Vladimir Tarasenko, who could have gone for a first round pick, but they didn't have to trade as much for him as he was a guy on an expiring deal. Seth Jones, it cost them Spencer Knight and another first round pick, but Spencer Knight was blocked. There was still another year of Sergei Bobrovsky on the deal, and it was only a $2.5 million difference with dishing out Spencer Knight's 4.5 and then Chicago retaining salary there. So it really only costs you 2.5, and you reallocate that money as far as the cap for the Panthers. So really, for the Panthers here, there's not even 5 guys on their roster who were drafted by the team. So you think about how the Panthers are able to build this and also get the best out of other guys. I mean, you're thinking even 2 years ago, Brandon Montour, where they traded the 3rd round pick, and he was the power play quarterback for the first 2 seasons under Paul Maurice and really exploded, especially in 2023, the most points in a single season by a defenseman. So it's really comes down to the guys and their buy-in to the system. And to think that the Panthers, even in 2022, when they got swept by the Lightning, run and gun style offense, trading chances, a lot of high danger going back to the goaltender. So it was a lot of these 4-3, 5-4 type of games. And then the Panthers realizing that that wasn't the way to win ultimately in the postseason. And then still some of the core still being around, get out Huberdeau, bring in Tkachuk, more net front presence, more of those second chance opportunities for the Panthers. And you see the big difference that it has been for the Cats and just their ability to keep the puck out of their net. The 2024 run was mostly about keeping it out of their net, but then you see the 2025 94 goals, and then you see how well, especially what you need to do to win, a third line. Every single year, it's been Anton Lundell, Eetu Luostarinen, but there's always been that revolving door at winger. But now with Brad Marchand extending, it's going to be Brad Marchand there for the long haul. The previous 2 years, Sam Reinhart, Vladimir Tarasenko. So that's been the very most consistent part about why the Panthers have been able to go to these three runs in the final.
Yeah, it's kind of funny you mentioned that because for comparison's sake, like I said, Lightning kind of went the other way. They had the Nikita Kucherov, the Steven Stamkos, they drafted Braden Point. They had Victor Hedman. They had all these guys. They're like, okay, these are established parts here. But the third line, again, like you guys, that's where the money happened. We went out, got Barclay Goodrow. That was a big deal. He kind of comes in shores. We got Nick Paul. That was another deal that I think added a different dimension to that third line. And it sort of added a different personality to the Lightning. We were the run and gun team. We just sort of outskated, out finessed, and we rode that all the way to what at the time was the best regular season in NHL history. What happened? We ran into a brick wall against Columbus, who is a team built on sort of that philosophy that the Panthers are now. That sort
and
of just
two of them there, Bobrovsky and Seth Jones.
And Seth Jones, yeah. Again, and that's sort of the thing is we realize, I think at that point, it's like, okay, pure skill is not enough. I know that we're in the era of, advanced stats and analytics and everything, but you need sort of that different personality, that change of pace to kind of inspire the rest of the team. And that's what happened with Tampa. That's how we got over the hump, is we had those guys that went out and were willing to get a little bit more physical, willing to kind of go chase the puck, do some of those harder work sort of plays. That's what, I think really got the Lightning over the hump. And I watched the Panthers and some of the moves they've made, bringing in Brad Marchand, and actually that transitions me to this, Sam Bennett. Everybody talks about Sam Bennett. Oh, he's the guy that gets under people's skin. He goes out, throws his body around. Sam Bennett scored a lot over the past 2 years. So you're getting guys not only that bring that personality, but they're putting up numbers too. And I think that is so important for the Florida Panthers and why they've been so successful.
Sam Bennett, playoff Sam, has gone all the way back to his days in Calgary, even when they were in the bubble in the Western Conference. So he's come up big in so many different spots. I mean, yeah, he had that suspension in round one against Tampa Bay in 2021, charging to Ross Colton coming from all the way across the ice and then charging him there. So
we remember.
He definitely doesn't sit well with Lightning fans going all the way back there. But yeah, Sam Bennett is just there's just a switch that he turns on whenever it comes to the postseason. And even this year, Carter Verhaeghe, a down year, just around 20 goals for him. The shooting percentage was almost cut in half. This was and the thing is, opening night this year, he signs an extension that actually kicks in this year, and we're questioning whether that's a deal that Bill Zito would ultimately regret. And then look what happens. So many different clutch goals that Carter Verhaeghe had throughout the run, and that was his postseason pace was a regular season pace of like in the mid 30s of goals, which is where Carter Verhaeghe usually is. So it's like, okay, that's the one where that's the Carter Verhaeghe that we remember, which Tampa Bay also got to experience with him in the bubble playoffs when they won against the Dallas Stars, which we mentioned the injuries for Florida and Tampa Bay. Even in that one, Steven Stamkos, the one shift, scores, doesn't play a single one shift after that. So a lot of special moments at different times throughout these last 6 years for the state of Florida and hockey.
Yeah. The one thing I got to say I'm jealous of is, and I think you alluded to a little bit at the top here, after our back-to-back cups, after we made that Stanley Cup final that third year, the cap really came into play here. It didn't rise fast. We had to make some tough decisions. Even back to letting, Barclay Goodrow go. We made the decision to trade Sergei last year, who's such a big part of this team, kind of challenging Victor Hedman for the role of number one D-man at certain points of the season before he left. And of course, difficult decision to get rid of Stamkos. We've had to make a lot of sacrifices in order to sort of stay competitive. And then we turn around and what happens this year? You sign all of your free agents for what looks like extremely team-friendly contracts. Do Lightning fans have the right to be a little miffed at you guys this offseason for that?
I mean, sure, if they want to, but also got to understand the circumstances. What was then versus now. I'm sure if Tampa Bay had the opportunity with the rising cap, I mean, I'm sure they would have been able to keep everyone. And yeah, it's funny because when 2022 happened for Tampa Bay, a lot of Panther fans were angry about the whole Nikita Kucherov spending the whole season on LTIR. Steven Stamkos goes down right before the trade deadline. They were able to add David Savard, but look what happens. The Panthers also benefited from that just a few years later, so we can't be mad about it anymore. So it's all even in that part.
Yeah, and Vegas winning the Cup a few years ago also paid off. I have one big question for you that I want to ask you after this break. It has to do with this rivalry and where it stands in the NHL right now. Plus, let's look ahead to what this matchup might be this season. We'll do that in just 1 second. Today's episode is brought to you by Indeed. Hey, do you run a business and did you just realize that your company needs to hire someone new like yesterday? So how do you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job posts seen on other sites. Indeed sponsored jobs puts your post at the top of the page and helps you reach the right candidates faster. We've all been in that spot where you need the right hire, like right at the right time. The pressure's on, and every day without the right person is a setback. That's where the sponsored jobs come in handy. Indeed matches you with top candidates that match your search and gets your ad in front of them so you can reach out to the best candidates immediately. So now you can speed up your hiring process with a $75 sponsored job credit. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about it on Locked On Lightning. Terms and conditions apply. If you're hiring, Indeed is all you need. We're back on this crossover edition of Locked On Lightning and Locked On Panthers. Nick Morgan from Locked On Lightning, joined by Armando Velez from Locked On Panthers. Armando, I'm just going to ask you straight up. Is Lightning versus Panthers the best rivalry in the NHL right now?
I not only think that it's the best rivalry in the NHL right now, but when you're looking at the entire landscape of the Eastern Conference, and honestly, my appearance on Locked On NHL Game Night for a season preview is actually coming out Wednesday night. So you guys will be listening to who I believe is the biggest threat to the Florida Panthers in the Eastern Conference, and I'm just going to spoil it right here, right now.
Let's do it.
It's still the Tampa Bay Lightning, in my opinion. For when you look at the entirety of the Eastern Conference, Toronto, they lost Mitch Marner and they filled a lot of the depth pieces, but that's 100 points that you're missing, and a guy who is running the power play and can play on the PK as well. You're looking, Ottawa, they're on their way up, but I don't know how ready they actually are to take that next step. Maybe their ceiling is maybe around the second round this year. Montreal's still very, very young. When you look at these two teams, both of them have world-class goaltenders. Both of them have world-class defensemen. Victor Hedman for the Tampa Bay Lightning, Gustav Forsling, Aaron Ekblad for the Panthers here. You think about all the forward depth, which, oh my goodness, it's still, you look at the amount of board battles that the Panthers have against Nikita Kucherov. Although he's on a 10-game goalless streak in the postseason against the Panthers, he could sneak a backdoor pass to the net front and you won't see it coming. At least with Braden Point speed, you could at least anticipate him on a breakaway and scoring through the 5-hole if he dekes someone enough with enough time. But I just think with how these two teams are built, and also with the coaching of these two teams, I still think it's Tampa. I still think it's Tampa Bay. Yeah, Nikolai Ehlers is a new addition to the Carolina Hurricanes, but what has been his issue over his career in Winnipeg? It's been injuries. He's been hurt. Yeah, it's a more top end scoring, but they're going to be in the top 3 in the Metro. That they still have to get through that part of the bracket before they make it to the Eastern Conference Final, where I believe they would meet one of Tampa Bay or Florida. And look at and although, yes, it says 4-1 for the Panthers and Lightning in the first round, but I really do believe that series in 2025 was a lot closer than the one in 2024.
Agreed.
Which you think, if Aaron Ekblad is called for that a 5-minute major in the game, how much does that game 4 change? At the time, I was saying the Panthers didn't necessarily win the series, but they prevented themselves from losing the series when they went up 3-1, because you didn't know what was going on, what was going to happen at the time of that hit from Ekblad on Hagel. Niko Mikkola in that game ran Gergensons to the board and got a 5-minute major in that one as well. So that is another thing of all the questions of what could have happened and how it could have swung had the Panthers lost that game 4 at home.
I watched that series, and I don't have stats to back this up. I'm not going to dive into like the micro stats or anything like that, but just based on the old-fashioned eye test, I think Tampa Bay gave Florida its toughest series. I think that was the most even matchup skill-wise, and that honestly includes the Edmonton Oilers. I'm probably going to get flack for that, but I think the Lightning were deeper in terms of what matchups they exploited, or at least went toe-to-toe with the Panthers. I think the only issue to me in why you guys won it in the way you did was that I think the defensive depth ran out a little bit for Tampa Bay. That was, I think, maybe the big issue. And honestly, going into this year, I think still the big issue for Tampa Bay. Who's going to be that third pairing, those 2 depth guys that are going to come on there and just sort of weather the storm for 16, 17 minutes a night? If you're a bottom pair defenseman, your one goal is just go on the ice and don't screw anything up. And I don't mean that as a joke. I mean, that is sort of the role of the bottom pair defenseman. You're not necessarily a game changer. You're just good enough to not be a game loser. And I think for multiple different reasons, the combination of Lilberg, Darren Radish just wasn't that in the playoffs last year. I think another year of experience for them both. Maybe there's a shot that the Lightning go out and maybe get one more veteran D-man for cheap. I think that's the biggest thing to address. And I'll also say the Lightning have a new defensive coach this year in Dan Heinold. That's another thing to watch, is whether there's some change to the defensive structure that maybe prevents that from being the issue when these two teams play potentially in a 7-game series again this year.
Yeah, and with Jeff Blashill taking the job with the Chicago Blackhawks, that's why they got the new coach on their D. And also, when I was previewing the series last year, I was thinking, look at the inexperience that is on their blue line outside of Victor Hedman. JJ Mosier he was in Arizona for a long time, so he didn't really get those playoff games under his belt. So that I was looking at that, I'm just thinking, with the Panthers, how they do dump and chase and how fast they are to get to the pucks, this could be a point of possible exposure. And also why the Tampa Bay Lightning were able to challenge the Panthers a lot more is because Vasilevskiy wasn't coming off a sub 900 save percentage season coming off his surgery. He had that full summer to get himself back, and now he's having two full summers in order to be back to possible Vezina form, which is once again why I believe they are still the biggest threat in the Eastern Conference to the Florida Panthers.
I struggle to find anybody else that's different. I think Carolina may be knocking on that door a little bit, trying to get in between them. But I still think it's these two teams that are the cream of the crop in the East until somebody else can consistently jump up there and challenge one of these. That's the cream of the crop, and it's wild that it's happening in the state of Florida. I'm sure people in Quebec are not happy about that right now, but it's crazy, and it's awesome to see hockey thrive in a non-traditional market. So the next time we see it will be 3 preseason games, including one in Orlando, which I know that's your home turf, so you're going to be hyped for that, I'm sure.
Yep, I'll be there. I'll be there in a suit and tie and everything there. So yeah, I'll be there.
Awesome. Well, Armando, thank you so much for joining us. It should be a great season between the Lightning and Panthers this year. For the rest of you, thanks for joining us this crossover edition of Locked on Lightning and Locked on Panthers. Again, thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Tune in to the Locked on NHL channel next, and we'll see you when we see you.